For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's Tuesday practice of UCLA week. Now, Shotgun, the headline last week was that USC's Cal game was rescheduled to December 4th. The headline entering this week is that interim head coach Dante Williams named Jaxson Dart the starter against UCLA. Was there anything different in practice because we know who the quarterback will be on Saturday?
I don't think there was necessarily anything different. We saw, Jaxson Dart getting the majority of the first team reps, which we saw last week because Kedon Slovis still not able to practice, still had the left leg sleeve on his knee. So, Dante Williams said that he has a policy where if you don't practice at least one practice, if you don't practice in a practice during the week, then you're not going to start the game. And that's part of the reason why he said that he named Jaxson Dart the starter. It definitely was a little bit different than how he's handled the situation in the past. He's always wanted to keep things up in the air for the opponent, force them to prepare for multiple quarterbacks or multiple, any position where they, may have someone banged up a little bit. But this week, decided to go ahead and put it out there. And I think they're just trying to give that confidence boost to Jaxson Dart, say, hey, this is yours. Let's run with it. Go forward and, use that confidence that everyone talks about, the swagger that he has, and, let that build for him and play into that. And going into the rivalry game, obviously, it's his first time being here. He's a kid from out of state, but he gets the first taste of it here against UCLA. So should be interesting to see how he reacts to not only just being the starter, but a starter in a rivalry game, making his first start in a school that was one of the finalists for him, during his recruitment as well. So it should be really interesting to see how it kind of plays out. But as far as just the practice reps, same thing as last week. He got the majority of the first team reps. Miller Moss got a couple in there as well and took the second team reps. So, those are the two quarterbacks that USC is going to be going with going forward until Kedon Slovis can get back to health and get back out practicing on the field.
Mm-hmm. And we heard from Dart today. What was his reaction to the news that he will be the starter?
Just a big smile as usual for him. He's a happy-go-lucky type of guy, and you see that he is just kind of trying to continue to improve on some things. Now, obviously, he had that great game against Washington State. Hasn't been as successful the last 2 weeks in the back and forth kind of rotation they've had, and hopefully this will help the USC offense find its rhythm a little bit more. Just having one quarterback, one guy they know is going to be back there, and I think that Jaxson Dart, I think that's kind of one of the things that he mentioned that hopefully the offense can find its way now with him, being the signal caller and being the only guy back there. Just give him a little bit more confidence and give the offense kind of know exactly what's going to be behind the offensive line, what's going to be behind him, the ball, how it's going to come out exactly. Same guy over and over and over. Should help with all those small things. And also just an extra week removed from not having Drake London, hopefully the offense can start finding its way a little bit more. Some of those wide receivers got some more reps, so that should help them. Just Jaxson Dart trying to get on the same page with all those wide receivers. That's a big thing for this offense and for the offensive line, trying to, be physical and create some run lanes for Keontae Ingram to get the run game going, to alleviate some of that pressure off of Jaxson Dart.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the phrases we hear about Jaxson Dart when we ask players and coaches is just natural leader. That's something that comes easy to him. Specifically, offensive coordinator Graham Harrell and running back Keontae Ingram talked about that today. How much will that or could that impact USC's offense when you have a guy who can kind of inspire the team like that?
Yeah, it's a different bravado. He's got that confidence. He's got that swagger. He wears the Air Jordans around. Keontae Ingram mentioned that. He comes in, he talks to everybody. He's much more vocal of a person. And this is kind of the difference from him and Kedon Slovis. This is one of the big differences, and something I said throughout the season, that if Kedon Slovis couldn't get things going, he's a guy you throw in there and can lift up everyone's spirits and can make something special happen, and maybe it brings the entire team up. So we'll see if the confidence of the entire team, with the way they've struggled the past couple of weeks on the offense, just all season actually, just kind of being start and stop, being able to move into the red zone. Can they finish off those drives? If they can get something going early, I think that builds the entire confidence of the offense, and I think it all stems from what Jaxson Dart can bring, that swagger that he brings in the locker room, the fact that he's jumping around all over the place. He's just kind of bouncing around, and everyone kind of, has an infectious personality. Now, Kedon Slovis, this is similar to Sam Darnold when he was at USC. He's a quiet guy. He's kind of reserved himself. He's not out, very vocal out in front of everything like that. So it's a different style of leadership there, and we'll see how the team responds to it. I think with the way the season has is gone, Jaxson Dart can provide something different that can maybe spark this offense, and that's what it's gonna be interesting to see on Saturday if the Trojans kind of really rally around him and respond to the energy that he brings.
Now, as you mentioned earlier, USC is going to have to run the ball early to alleviate some of that pressure off of Jaxson Dart. How much does that go on the offensive line now that defenses are going to stack the box, knowing that USC is going to try and run the ball more?
Well, it's a little bit of a combination. If you can throw some of those quick screens as well, that can help force the defense to not bring in that extra linebacker, force a nickelback to stay a little bit further outside. So those things can help as well, but they're often going to be an extra defender in there, and it's going to take the offensive line making sure they take care of all their blocks and letting Keontae Ingram maybe take care of that one unblocked guy. And Keontae Ingram has been able to do that a lot this season, but if he makes one guy miss and you're not holding your block and suddenly a second guy comes free, that's where you saw in the Arizona State game. He may make one guy miss, but the second and third guy were there to stop him at the line of scrimmage. So the offensive line, the big thing, I talked to Andrew Voorhees, talked to Brett Nealon, is physicality. They got to be more physical, but they got to be a little bit more perfect than they were in the past. They can't rely on, hey, I had an okay block, and then Keontae made sure to get around that guy before he could do any damage. They've got to hold those blocks one more second. That's what Brett Nealon said, that Clay McGuire is asking from them. Hey, one more second on your blocks, both in pass blocking and run blocking, and then giving Keontae Ingram a chance. If you can get him a couple yards downfield before that first contact, and then maybe he makes a guy miss, and suddenly you got 6, 7, 8 yards. Instead of him making a guy miss at the line of scrimmage, someone else gets there, and it's a 1 or 2 yard gain. That was the difference in that Arizona State game. So it's going to come down to that. Even if there's an extra defender in the box, you being able to get all your blocks so that Keontae Ingram only has one guy to try to make miss instead of multiple guys.
Now, health-wise for USC's offensive line, what is it looking now? What have we seen in practice?
Yeah, that's one of the big things. Coming into this week is to get Liam Jimmons back. He was not able to practice last week. Going into the Cal week, it was questionable whether he would be able to play. So they got their starting right guard back. And then it's interesting. Cortland Ford came back last week. We saw him do a little bit. He was back as a full participant today. But he's on the second team. He got demoted to the second string, and they're keeping Andrew Voorhees at left tackle, keeping Justin Dedich at the left guard position. And Andrew Voorhees said, those two guys combined. I asked him what they kind of bring and how they have working together. He said, they're really good friends off the field. They've known each other for a long time, both veteran guys. He said they bring physicality, and I think that's the reason why you're keeping them there. Obviously, there's been some struggles at both of the tackle positions this season with the young guys, Cortland Ford and Jonah Monheim, and Andrew Voorhees did a pretty good job against Arizona State, especially in an unnatural position. He told me this is the first time I practiced at left tackle since high school. Wow. So, it was kind of getting thrown in there. He said he's feeling a little bit more comfortable as the extra week he got to prepare last week and now this week and some practice time there as well. You still got a little bit of concern about the speed rushes off the edge, just because that's one of the areas where when you move a guy out and now he's in space, how does he deal with that? And that's one of the things Andrew Voorhees said he's really working on is the pass blocking, his pass sets to deal with those guys getting really wide, the wide 9 defensive ends and the blitzes off the edge. So that's an area where he's working to improve, and an area that didn't really hurt USC against Arizona State, but their offensive line, it's going to be a very veteran bunch. Now that either Jonah Monheim or Cortland Ford are in the starting lineup now, you've got 5 veteran guys there, and they're hoping that will help them. They've gelled pretty well and they know each other all well, and Clay McGuire said that hopefully that group can continue to work together well going forward, and they can open up some run lanes early, get a couple of, doesn't necessarily even have to be explosive runs, but some solid runs. That just takes that much pressure off of Jaxson Dart if you can get him in 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 2s, some manageable third downs early in the game so he can complete some short passes and get his confidence going, and then maybe run some of that read option as well. Different things this offense can do, but it starts with the offensive line up front.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the past, when we've seen a quarterback change, QB2 elevated to the starting role, we kind of see the second-team wide receivers elevate as well. Deontay Burnett and Sam Darnold pops into my head. Do you see that in practice with Jaxson Dart? Does anyone have a connection with him in particular?
I think the most interesting one is Michael Jackson III. He's his roommate. He's Jaxson Dart's roommate, so they've have a great connection off the field, and he's been catching passes from him all season. So I think that's one to keep an eye on. Michael Jackson played his most snaps last game, getting some extra opportunities. Talked to him, and he said with Jackson back there, he says, hey, maybe we'll get some more targets, and he said he hopes for that as well. So that's one to keep an eye on. Kyle Ford had a number of catches today in practice. He's a guy as well, but it's going to come down to Taj Washington and Gary Bryant. Those guys need to make a lot of plays for USC for this receiving core to be at its best. So I think you want to see some of those younger guys guys, and some of those guys, those reserves, step up. But I think those two guys in the front need to have big games as well against UCLA.
Alrighty, Shotgun, any final thoughts before we wrap it up here on a Tuesday?
We just had some interesting injury updates. Michael Trigg was back out there today, did a couple of one-on-one reps. I think he's still questionable for this week. I don't know if we'll see him, but a great sign to see him back out in pads and actually doing some work. Ishmael Softshirt, though, was not at practice today. Didn't see him. That's a guy that we saw do a little bit of scout team work last week. We saw Jamar Sakona do that as well. We saw him again today, Sakona, but did not see Softshirt. So I don't know if that's a setback or what exactly why he wasn't there. We didn't get an update on that one. But also some depth issues at cornerback in particular. You had the starters there, Chris Steele and Isaac Taylor-Stewart. But after that, there was only two bodies, and one of those is Amarian Gordon, the freshman that they've moved from the safety position to cornerback. So, not a ton of guys there. The fourth cornerback that they did have today at practice was Prophet Brown, another true freshman. So, not a lot of depth there. Don't know exactly what's going on with all those guys. Joshua Jackson was injured last week and did not practice. We didn't see him today. Didn't see Jaden Williams either. Didn't see Sierra Wright. So, a lot of guys missing in that group. So, that's interesting. And one guy, a positive note on the injury front, Nick Figueroa. Did see him back today. And did see him getting some first-team reps, so that's a positive sign as well because he's a guy that kind of changes that defensive line. You can do some different things. He can move inside, outside, and he's a guy that gets to the quarterback, and that's something they haven't consistently done this season.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's Tuesday practice of UCLA week. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.